Blended workforces are one of the hottest talent strategies today, where employers are using a mix of traditional employees with external resources like independent contractors, coaches, consultants, vendors, and technology solutions, all in order to enhance competitiveness, ensure cost flexibility, and expedite business goals. But how are the successful companies infusing blended workforces into their business strategy? And what are the critical success factors and pitfalls to avoid during implementation? And on the flip side, what does it really take for suppliers to improve their chances of finding and landing contract opportunities? The devil is in the details, my friends. I'm your host, Karen Farrell Rhodes, and it's time to get smarter about blended workforces at work. Hello, my superstars out there. This is Karen, and welcome to another episode of the Blended Workforces at Work podcast. We are so thrilled that you're joining another episode with us, and hopefully you will continue to do so. So please remember to like and subscribe to make sure you always get notified when we have a new fantastic episode, just like the episode that we have today for you. We are so pleased to have on today's show Audra Nichols, who is the Chief Operating Officer of MBO Partners. And MBO Partners, if you don't know, it's a direct sourcing platform that enables enterprises and independents to work efficiently together. And with me being so passionate about the power of blended workforces in the whole workforce industry, if you will, I've been following MBO Partners for quite some time now, them and other leaders such as them, and seeing what they're doing to help make the world of work easier for both companies and consultants like myself, work together. And so when I saw an opportunity to feature one of their executives, of course I jumped at the chance. So welcome to today's show, Audra. We're so happy to have you.
Well, thanks, Karen. I'm delighted to be here.
Awesome. So I know we could talk about this topic for hours, literally, but since we can only get a little bit of your time, we're going to jump right in very soon. But before we do that, we'd love to learn a little bit more about you. So just for as much as you feel comfortable, would you give us a sneak peek into maybe your life outside of work?
Sure, I will. I am a morning person. I'm an early
You're
riser.
killing me
I know I
already.
get up at 4:30 in the morning. Everyone thinks I'm crazy. And you know what? No one actually enjoys that,
Really?
but it's a matter of discipline. So I get up and I go to the gym and I have a personal trainer. And it's kind of like my social life because we spend so much time here, Karen, these
Yeah.
days,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like I love to go to the gym just to have the noise and the energy and the activity because I love the energy.
Yeah.
Do I love to work out? No, not really. But I know it's required, so I get up and do that. I also have two boys. You and I have talked a bit about this. One is an artist, one is an engineer. I'm going to tell you something. They could not be more opposite. You don't know how they came from the same parents. Is it not crazy? But they are the lights of my life.
Oh.
And I can tell you for all of you who have smaller children and are raising them, like every stage you think is perfect. It is fantastic having adult children.
It
We're
is.
going to Italy this summer. We love to travel. We try to do one trip a year. It gets harder as they get their own lives. But adult children it's a ton of fun.
It is. I can just
Yeah.
totally high five you and concur 50 times over because we have kids of similar ages, and every stage was wonderful, but this stage is very unique because we're both friends,
Yeah.
as well as they still respect the parent-child relationship, but conversations, and it's such a tremendous level. I mean, I can't concur more. Just the joy. And you know what? We never get rid of them. They always come back just to
Nice.
talk and hang and, and what have you.
Which means you did something right, Karen. When your
Oh,
kids want to hang out with you, right? As they get
yeah,
older, that means to me that's the greatest blessing. It means
it
we've done
is.
something right.
It is. I'm gonna accept that and take
Yeah.
that because we do generally enjoy our time together.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for sharing, Andrea. So let's get into talking about blended workforces. I know you and I both have an extreme passion around this. I mean, you're chief operating officer of one of the largest firms that specializes in it, and I came from the corporate side on the enterprise level. side of the house as well. Most of the companies I worked for were Fortune 100 companies. So, and I was on the buy side at the time. Now,
Yeah.
now that I've started a firm, we're on the supplier side. But there is immense power in blended workforces, but it has to be done right. I found you have to have the right types of strategies in place, really think through your business for both sides of the house, for both your enterprise level companies as well as for the suppliers. They've got to be qualified and ready for integration into those types of opportunities. So let's just get started getting your thoughts around, first of all, let's start about what, in your opinion, is the power of blended workforces, number one. And then maybe what are some of the things, one or two things that are things that both companies and suppliers need to watch out for that might be either roadblocks or quicksand around
Right.
blended
Sure.
workforces?
Yeah, so let me start with the power of the blended workforce, and I'll make it a little bit more specific, right? At MBO Partners, as most may or may not know, we specialize in the independent professional, right? Somebody who's chosen to, let's just say, for simplicity, be a 1099. They've chosen not to be an employee of a large organization where you and I both come from. And so that's really our focus. But that is a component of it. I spent my career in a multi-billion-dollar professional services firm, and I was a power user of independent contractors.
Yeah.
Then I was a client of MBO Partners, and now I am at MBO Partners because my passion has taken me there, right?
Right.
So if I think about it really from a C-suite perspective, or let's just call it like an operations leader of any organization, when you mix independent consultants or contractors into your business of full-time equivalents, it's going to do a number of things. It's going to give you, first of all, and really very basically, if you have a defined mix, if you know, I want so many hours of my billable hours, let's say, to be through an independent contractors, you're creating an environment where, from a pure operations leadership perspective, you're managing your operating capital. So your carrying costs, right, are not as high because you've intentionally said, I know that I can bring in experts in these particular areas. It's perfect for innovation. You may have an innovation project that's going to run 4 months. If we even think about AI today, every organization doesn't have the greatest AI professionals on staff, and you probably don't need that. So we're upskilling our employees. At the same time, we can bring in folks to help us innovate. They can do a project and then they can move back out, versus you really don't have that flexibility to hire a whole innovation team for a particular project.
Right.
So one, I think it helps you breed innovation. Two, you can do that in a very agile way. If you just think about where many large organizations were, let's say, a year or two after COVID, even 2023, Karen, look at the number of organizations had to lay people off.
Yes.
Those who had a true intentional mix of how they brought independent contractors to the table had far less risk from that employment perspective in terms of laying people off.
That's true.
So innovation, agility, carrying costs, you can actually affect your margin, your profitability, and based on how you measure your profitability for how you bring in your independent contractors based on how you're serving your clients.
Absolutely. So yes, and I hold executive HR huddles with
Yep.
CHRs all the time. And we talk about things that are top of mind for them. And one of the CHROs of a fairly large organization said she had been trying to help her executives understand how they needed to tweak their workforce strategy to include more independence, to provide more agility for the company, cost wise, skills wise, you name it. But it was a hard sell to her executives because they couldn't get their minds around it yet. They couldn't understand how to truly infuse it without breaking other things within the organization, like employee morale or risk of losing some FTVs or wanting people they want to move over to the independent side if it was offered. Have you found that as well as your organization talks with enterprise levels, or If not, what are some of the main pushbacks that firms have when you're really talking about including or a blended or deeper blended workforce strategy into their operations?
I think it varies. I think, yes, I have found that. Although I will say today, it's less consistent
Mm,
than it was several years ago. I mean, let's just think about some of the facts, right? Today, we do a state of independence report every year. It's one of our flagship
goodness.
thought leadership
Yeah.
pieces. And you may know this, many of your listeners may not.
Yeah.
But in 2023, there were 72.1 million independents in the United States.
Wow.
That is up 89% from 2020. And it's not like this is like a COVID thing. It's gone up and up and up since COVID.
Yeah.
89% increase. So the reality is that if you're the C-suite and you're really paying attention, you're going to have to recognize that you're going to hit a wall if you're thinking just traditionally.
Exactly.
72.1 million is a large portion of the workforce.
It is.
A couple of other facts, and this is what I encourage even many of my colleagues or friends in other organizations to talk about, is start with the facts.
Yes.
The other thing is that we truly do have a human scarcity issue. If you're to really think about it, we do. So a couple of things. Right today, the number of job openings outweighs employment 2-to-1.
Yes.
Okay. So that's a big deal. Another thing to think about, if you just think about the minds of the workers, I'll call it workers. In
Mhm.
1980, Karen,
Yes.
2/3 of organizations had a defined benefits plan, a pension plan. Today, that number is less than 10%.
I believe it.
Some studies will say it's 3%. So what does that tell us? That tells us that if you're a worker, corporate America broke its promise to us,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So your mindset is very, very different.
Mhm.
The other thing is, and I think this was recently published from a federal perspective, the average tenure today of an employee is 4.1 years. Average. We're talking from boomers all the way down. If you're less than 35 years old, it's 2.7 years. And Gen Z, it's 1.1 years.
Yeah.
So take some of those facts, right? And put them together. And if you're an organization, you must think differently. The facts are what help us have that conversation. Now
That's
let's
right.
think about the cultural component, because that's the hardest part.
Yes.
I recently worked on a study with Forrester. And the majority of organizations recognize and say, these are the C-suite, that 35% of their work hours will come from independence in the next 3 years.
Yeah.
And I've got 3 data points for that. Our state of independence says 30. The SIA report says 35, and this Forrester report says 33 or something like that. It's all within the same range.
Yeah.
The issue is, well, they recognize that. How do I do that? I think is what's speaking to what you came out of.
Yes.
That's the hard part.
That
Is
is.
how do I do that? Now, very few organizations are going to rip and replace. So you have to have an intentional strategy to do it as a part of normal attrition,
Yes.
your evolution. It's a huge transformation,
It
but
is.
you don't just rip the Band-Aid off.
No.
You have an intentional approach to take that through. And I really believe one of the key factors that changes that, and perhaps this is what you're hearing kind of in your chats, is leadership. And traditional leaders don't necessarily consistently have the skills they need today to manage a blended workforce.
That's true.
People expect more flexibility.
Yes.
Digital nomads, 17.3 million people in the US are digital nomads, meaning they want to work wherever they can. These are not like dudes in dreadlocks in a van.
Right.
Right. The
Yeah.
average age is 39, believe it or not, which actually surprised me, but that's 11% of the US. How you work with and get the best of the best from those folks, whether they're employees, they're independent contractors, it doesn't matter. It's a choice that they've made, but they still want to work.
Yeah.
It's not that they don't want to work, but how you lead in an environment with this type of blended workforce is very, very different. And I often believe that some of that concern or some of that hesitancy is not necessarily not the recognition that I need this blended workforce and I'm going to bring independent contractors in,
Yeah.
but how do I as a leader manage that?
Yes.
And I don't believe I and my leadership team have those skills. And that's what organizations like mine can help with. But that's really what I think the crux of it is.
I think it is too. That's pulling the layer of the onion back a little bit. I do believe that's where they're very nervous about because it shows vulnerability and what maybe skills that they're lacking or gaps that they're needing to be filled. And you're right, partnering with an organization, such as yours would really help them understand what's possible and
Right.
upskill their teams, their leadership teams as well. So I think that is extremely important. And, the way we look at blended workforces for our podcast and in our company and our consulting firm is we also include tech in there as well. Because you have
Yes.
your full FTEs, you have your independents, but everybody's using some form of technology to thread work streams together. And they're all
Agreed.
using them. And then so these managers or leaders are having to lead all of that together in the most efficient way possible to get work done. And then you pull down the layers of the onion a little bit further. Who do you give access to what? And for your independence, how do you interact with them without crossing the IRS guidelines? And, all
Right.
of those day to day concerns that come up sometimes overwhelm leaders if they don't have that kind of coaching and guidance. Can
It's
you see that
definitely
as
a
well?
different way of working. And to your point, keeping those independents compliant is really, really important
Yes.
for any organization, particularly the large ones. And that's something I would never recommend an organization do on their own. You
Yeah.
need organizations like mine, MBO. We
Yeah.
do that for you. That's something that you want to have the experts
Yeah.
in. And to your component of tech, yeah, I actually just had this conversation. I think it was just yesterday, right? And I recently went to a conference on AI and the human component of AI and the use of tech. But when you really think about it, there's no time better than today when you don't have people where you use tech and you can take somebody who is either new to the organization or independent and they can be productive and relevant in your environment because of the access to knowledge that historically was up here in people's minds,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
So it was all up here. But today I can bring in an independent, a new employee. Like here at my organization, we use AI, which has pulled generative AI has pulled all of our knowledge bases together where I can just ask, we call her Cleo, a question. And the historic knowledge of this entire organization is at my fingertips. I don't need to find out who to go to or what SharePoint site it's on,
Right.
or I should go talk to Sue, who's been here for 39 and a half years, but only Sue knows. Like we have the ability
Yeah.
to actually bring people together as a team with relevance and skills and content faster and better than we ever have
Yeah.
today.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's just amazing how business and technology has helped the world of work transform just in the last, I won't even go like 5 years, 3 to 5 years. It's just
Yeah,
been absolutely insane. And I am a glass half full kind of gal. So I think it brings even more opportunities to all stakeholders, no matter if you're independent, a company itself, or even a tech supplier or vendor. Just
right.
the ability to collaborate in new and interesting ways. I mean, the world's oyster, here. With that, I don't want to miss out. I know we've been talking a little bit on the advantages for the corporate side of the house, but I'd love for you to talk a little bit about the world of independence, meaning yes, a lot of people are working more independently now versus being a full-time employee, but it's not for everybody, right? There's some people that they thrive in that entrepreneurial, independent type of environment. And then there are others that they struggle. Just because you were a great worker bee and a certain skill at a company does not mean you're ready to, go and work for the Amazons of the world, right? So
Right.
can you share with us a little bit of advice or thoughts about those who are independents, both new and seasoned, how they should approach really being prepared to work and integrate themselves if they get an opportunity on a contract with companies such as the ones you all work with?
Yeah, for sure. I can talk about it. Also, many of my dear friends have been independents and actually were on key projects of mine.
Yeah,
I'm going to go back 6 and 7 years, who are still some of my dearest friends.
me
And
too.
so I know their world.
Yeah,
And obviously I know based on where I am today, but I will also say I'm an employee here at MBO and I've chosen that. So
right.
there's a couple of things that I think the mind of the independent. First, I'm just going to reference, we did a study, a paper came out last maybe August. It's called Digital Nomads. And it actually takes you into the mind of an independent a digital nomad, right? And they make choices for very particular reasons, and they all vary. There is no such thing as same. They're not same. They're all different,
Yep.
right?
Right.
But to really get the best out of being an independent and saying, I want to be a 1099, right? I don't want to be a W-2.
Yes.
You do have to be prepared to have a business development effort. I know many people today who were those 1099s
Yeah.
who want to be W-2s because that business development effort,
It's
it's not
hard.
something they love, and it
Yeah.
is not easy,
No.
right? You have to have multiple clients. You can't look like a W-2 and handle all those tax and IRS laws, right? So that is one thing that if you're like, I'm really going to go into business for myself and be self-employed, remember, self-employed means that you are truly self-employed and that you have multiple clients and you know how to gain those clients, you know how to manage to those clients, you know how to do your taxes, you know how to handle all your financials, etc.
Yes.
From a culture perspective, I think many independents today do a fantastic job because they bring to it a belief in that outcome that they're working on, right? A belief in the deliverable or the product based on the expertise they bring to bear.
Yeah.
And they're really masterful at integrating into the culture of a team by asking questions, by leveraging the resources available to them. And they actually have a tremendous relationship skills to become a part of that team quickly. That's important.
It is.
If you're truly an introvert and you just want to do your piece, you're probably not going to join an engagement team for a consultancy and be the lead program manager,
Right.
right? So it's knowing where you can bring your skills
Yeah.
to the table, and then whatever that project is, they want to receive, right? But you can call the shots
Yeah.
as an independent. You can choose what work you want to take on and what work you don't. Most of the folks that I know personally have become independent for exactly that reason.
That's right. And to your point, it's always particular to the individual themselves, if there are
Absolutely.
reasons why. Yeah. So I'm going to flip the script a little bit, Audra, and talk about your role at MBO Partners in the sense that being this platform that is a matchmaker of sorts, if you will,
Mhm.
providing excellent talent to companies who are seeking them. As Chief Operating Officer, what are some of the things that kind of what do you do mostly for your role? And what are some of the things that keep you up at night? Because I imagine as a COO, you're concerned with the supply side, the demand side, as well as keeping the operations of MBO partners humming along as well. So let me hush for a second and see where you'd
Sure.
love to jump in and give us some insights of your life.
Okay. So I'm going to start with probably what's most important to me is in my role as COO, I've got all of the client services teams, the product team, the engineering team, but really what I wake up thinking about every day. And I have learned so much from the people on my teams who've been doing this for many, many years and come out of this industry in particular is the talent experience and the client experience. And no organization will grow or succeed if they are not that close to their customer every single day.
Right.
Our customers are twofold. It is the talent, it is the independence, and it is the enterprise, right? And if the talent has an experience that isn't perfect in their mind at that time, guess what? The enterprise knows about it, right? So we wake up every day saying, how can I make sure the experience of the talent, how they interface with the platform, the client service that we give them, how we get them onboarded, how we make their lives easier. Basics. Do they get paid? Like making sure they get paid on time, exactly what they wanted. They have visibility into it. I've got a whole team of people who every single day, that is what they do. And that is what they care about.
Nice.
The enterprise on the other side, they want the most skilled people at the point they need it for the price point they want it to be. So that's where we make that match, right?
Right.
The enterprise has slightly different expectations. Some of our enterprise clients truly want us, and this is where we're masterful, to engage with them on the journey, right? We're working with a client right now who's expanding everything they're doing globally. We are their key advisors. We will run this for them. We will build it in different countries all over the world. They want us to be their advisors, their change management experts. They want us to implement alongside other components of the organization,
Right.
right? Some don't want that change management as deeply based on where they are in their journey, but they always want the talent
Yeah.
and they always want to make sure that we are keeping them compliant, which
Yeah.
is our history of 30 years, right?
Absolutely.
They know that we are there to manage that risk for them. And we have unique and I think proprietary ways in which we do that. And they rely on us for that. So that's what I do every day. But the client and talent experience is what is most palpable for me.
Yeah.
When I look at the business and I look at the market and I look at growing MBO, we're very fortunate. Really, our business has still grown even while other businesses have contracted. So we're very, very fortunate in that. And that's not just circumstance. I believe that's the focus of every single person here on knowing the talent personally, understanding what they need and what they want, and knowing the client and what they need and what they want, and making sure we meet them there. We had an hour and a half call this morning around, we have a voice of the customer program, right? Where we're talking to the talent and we ask them at different points throughout their journey to get their feedback. And so we had an hour and a half call today where we reviewed talent feedback based on who they were on the phone with, who onboarded them, how many Google reviews we get, where we can improve. And we go down like literally line by line. Oh, well, when they clicked this, they got confused here. Okay, let's put that on the list so we can enhance that experience for them.
That is amazing. And it is so important to stay close to your customer because how else are you going to provide exemplary service and repeat
Yeah.
business if you don't provide that? And so I think that's amazing that you gave us a sneak peek into what you and your team does a lot. Before we wrap up, and I told you time was going to fly with you and I talking here. I would be remiss if I didn't ask you where your impression so far of where you think blended workforces will evolve maybe in the next, 2 to 4 years. What is your research and trending showing other than more and more companies considering it? But are there any other insights that you see as far as trends and how either companies or independents will be using blended workforces or how blended workforces will evolve over time?
Let me think about that from something really meaningful. Obviously, our stats show us that there will be more and more independence out there, but at some point, what goes up must come down or level off, right? I think the game changer in this is organizations and talent's use of technology, right?
Yeah.
Where is
Mhm.
AI going to go? There are some who think AI is going to replace the human. I happen to be someone who thinks that that AI doesn't exist without the human. And so, where does that get fed into a business? And where is the value of the mind and the human and the experiential component of it going to come into play? I think that is one trend that we talk a lot about, but I don't think we've necessarily predicted what is next there. We talked about it a little bit before. I don't think it gets a lot of play. This is my personal belief. My personal belief is that the skills and I'm going to call it the leadership ability of an organization must evolve. I'm not saying people aren't doing it right, but
Yeah,
I don't think we consciously talk about it enough.
I agree.
I don't think we talk about it enough in terms of not just what does it mean to deal with Gen Zs,
Right.
right? Which, there's lots of memes out there, et cetera. But there is so much value in the diversity of these generations and of how people choose to work that as leaders, if we are not thinking about that, getting that feedback and shaping the future of our business and the leadership skills of our C suite, of our senior VPs, of our middle managers every single day, knowing that Gen Z is going to change jobs every 1.1 to 1.3 years,
Right.
like we're going to be in trouble. Like any
We're gonna
organization
have to
is going
plan
to
for
be in
that.
trouble.
Yeah. You gotta
So instead of
factor it
just
in.
acknowledging that these are trends or challenges, what are we doing about it? What are we doing about it as leaders? Not only for the talent, but for us and for our organization. Like it's our accountability
Yeah.
to be authentic in terms of how we teach our next level leaders
Yeah.
to be effective in the next 5 years. I really believe it's different than we are today. I think it requires more. I think it requires more fun. You and I probably had time in our past where I believe in breaking bread, right?
Yes, we
Where
do. Yeah.
I grew up where you went out to dinner with the client, you
Yeah.
went out to dinner with your teams, and you had the benefit of knowing that person one on one. And
Yeah.
there are some folks today who don't believe that you can build a relationship in chat.
Yeah.
I disagree.
I
I think
disagree.
you can. And I always believe there's value in breaking bread.
I do
But
too.
that relationship, people stay where and work with people that they trust and believe in and where they have friends.
That's right.
Right. And we have to shape that environment, which is much more virtual and much more diverse today.
You're so
And I
right.
think that's our accountability. I don't think we've spent enough time actually doing that.
And it can be done, ladies and gentlemen, because I spent 2/3 of my career leading global teams. We were
Yeah.
not in this was way before the pandemic, and we made it work. And these are friends of mine to this day. So
To
it
this
can,
day,
can
I
happen.
agree with you. Same thing.
All right. Well, before we wrap up, speaking of leaders, as you know, I wrote a book on leadership execution, and we always love to ask our guests which of the approaches and tactics that we write about that came out of our research really resonated with you. And you were so kind to share that leading with a drive for results really popped for you as well. And so, leader listeners, all of our tactics, the 7 that we write about, these are all tactics that are included in any successful leadership effort.
Yeah.
You might use them more in one situation versus another, but they're always there. And leading with a drive for results is all about being focused and tenacious about ensuring your end goals are reached, even if you have to pivot along the way. So curious minds want to know, Audra, why did leading with a drive for results really resonate with you?
Yeah, well, it should be surprising because I've spent my life as an operations leader, right? And so
Right.
it's all about what is that end game. But I think there are two components to that in terms of achieving results. And that is that number one, I like to focus on impact, right? So what we do with my team is like at the end of every week, when we're focused on those results, it's almost like, what is your invoice? What impact have you had for your business? Otherwise, it just goes on and on forever. So to me, results equal impact, and impact equals something to celebrate. And that gets us back to the human nature component of it, not just the cold facts that are on the spreadsheet or in the P&L, right? Those two things come together. The other thing that is meaningful to me, and I've written about this recently on LinkedIn, is that the process to get to those results is so important for you as an individual to learn. So you
Yeah,
have to celebrate that process. But if you don't know what result you're trying to achieve, you get lost and you miss the process. And that's
absolutely.
where we learn and where we grow as individuals. That's where organizations learn. To your point, you may have to pivot along the way, but you need to celebrate that process because that's how you get to the result. And then the next result you have to choose and the next goal because you've learned from that journey
Right.
and you can say, check, I've completed my OKR or whatever. Celebrating that process each time makes us all better.
It does. Oh, wow. Well, I could just drop the mic on that one because that was such great insight. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing. Well, I know this is all the time we have for today, and we'll have a ton of information in our show notes about your background and your bio, or people can learn more about you. But before I let you go, I'd love to give a little airtime for you to share where our listeners can find MBO partners as well as yourself.
Okay. Obviously, out MBOpartners.com. I will say you're going to find a couple of things out there that I think are really helpful if you just want to understand the space a little more with a focus on independence. We do have thought leadership that comes out every October, November called The State of Independence. We've done it for 13
It's
years.
fabulous.
That is out on MBOpartners.com,
Fabulous. Yeah.
as well as that digital nomads one I mentioned. Also fascinating. And actually, just today we put out there a paper that we did with Forrester that we call the recomposable workforce. So, which is kind
Ah,
of cool. And we did that with one of the leading analysts in Forrester, and I think that's fascinating and awesome. So, MBOpartners.com. You can find me on LinkedIn. Last year, every month, I did a leadership series of articles. What I'm doing now is more sporadic components of deep dives, but every week I put a quote out there. That sounds so cliche, but I'm going to tell you, nobody writes it for me. Okay. I do it myself and I make them really personal. I choose things that are meaningful to me, things that I've either done well or done abysmally poorly in my life, where I've learned from, things that I'm passionate about. I just posted one this morning. So those I get lots of engagement in, and I learn a lot from other people as you collaborate on LinkedIn.
yeah.
So I'd say go find me there.
You better run over there, ladies and gentlemen, because she's absolutely fascinating to follow. I can concur because I do myself. Well, thank you so much, Audra, for the gift of your time. I know you have a million other meetings to go to right after this, but boy, this was a fantastic conversation that we had with you today.
Likewise. I look forward to doing it at your kitchen table at some point, Karen. We talked about that.
That's right. Over a glass of wine, we said, right?
Absolutely.
Well, let's count on that. And thank you to listeners for the gift of your time, because we know that there are literally millions of other podcasts you can be listening to. We appreciate your support. Please be sure to remember to like and subscribe to the podcast and share with just one friend, because it's all time for us all to get smarter about blended work versus at work. Thanks a ton and see you next week. Well, that's our show for today. Thank you again for listening to the Blended Workforces at Work podcast. You can check out the show notes, additional episodes, bonus resources, and also submit guest recommendations on our website at blendedworkforcesatwork.com. You can also follow me on Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, or YouTube by searching for the name Karen Rhodes, with Karen being spelled Karan. And if you like the show, the greatest gift you can give would be to subscribe and leave a rating on your favorite podcast platform of choice. This podcast has been a production of Shockingly Different Leadership, a global consultancy which helps organizations execute their people, talent development, and organizational effectiveness initiatives on an on-demand, contract, fractional, or project basis. Huge thanks to the SDL production and editing team for a job well done. Bye for now.